stuff. So welcome guys to the How to MVP and How to Figma event. If you guys don't know me, my name is Anish, and this is the first ACM workshop I'm leading. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Check-in code is right here. We are MVP. And yeah, I know we did do an MVP workshop last quarter, but this one's going to be a little more specific than last quarter's. It's going to be about more of like for the projects teams, if you have an idea, how do you make that into an MVP? And it's still going to have good information if you're interested, but you're not on a projects team. But hopefully it will help for those of you who are in Innovate projects or just things along those lines. So yeah, we will get started then. 1 second. Okay. Yep, it's the check-in code again. So let's just go through it. What is an MVP? What does it stand for, and what does it mean? So it stands for minimum viable product, and just going through each word, the minimum in this case kind of refers to it's a really bare bones and basic version of your final product. You want to think of your final ideal product and really break it down into its simplest form. And it should still be viable enough on its own to be a viable product. I know it's kind of weird verbiage, but it shouldn't just be like one component of a website that does nothing on its own. It should still be a viable enough product, even though it's simple and it's bare bones. And you really want it to contain the essence of your ideal and final finished product. And this is a bit theoretical. I know it might be a little confusing. I'll talk about some examples, but for now, just what to keep in mind is that an MVP contains the essence of your final product in its simplest, its most bare bones form. So for an example here of how to build an MVP, let's just say in this analogy, your final product that you want to make is a car. And if you break down a car into its simplest form, it's something on wheels that moves. So for your MVP, you want to create something on wheels that moves. And a bike, a car, a scooter, they don't have all the complex and additional features that a car does, but they contain its essence. They're just a bare bones version of the car itself. So you wouldn't want to make an MVP out of like just a wheel or an axle or something like that, because that's just a component of your final product. It's more of a feature than a full product in and of itself. You want to try to think of it like a simpler version of your final product, if that makes sense. So if it's like a website or it's an app, it's something where you don't have all of the excess additional features. Well, not excess, but all of like the complex additional features. You kind of have just what's basic and what's bare bones in there. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Just let me know in the chat if there's anything confusing. But yeah, I'll keep going in that case. I'll just talk about a few more examples. So actually, yeah, first you may ask yourself, why should I bother with an MVP? Why should I even make one? Well, one thing to keep in mind is that there is no flawless product in entrepreneurship, and you want to get feedback and user testing as soon as possible. So by making something that's a really, really simple version of your final product and getting it out there into the market as soon as possible, you can get user testing, you can get feedback like as soon as possible, essentially. Because if you make a full product and you invest a lot of time and money into it, and then you realize something major was off, that's not going to really be good. That's kind of why you want an MVP. You want feedback as soon as possible. And like for whatever reason, if you have to kill the product in its MVP form, that's good because that just saved you a lot of time and money. And then for some of the steps on how to make an MVP, part one here is just kind of a general process for if you want to make anything, just what problem am I trying to solve? And then this is kind of where market research comes in, because you want to ask yourself what's already out there, what hasn't been done, and kind of like where am I fitting in here? And then step two is you're actually creating the MVP. It's just kind of a low code or bare bones version of your product. And then step three really kind of hits home on why you're making the MVP, because you're testing with the users as soon as possible. And yeah, like I said, you may have to kill the product here, but it's better to kill an MVP than to kill something where you invested a lot of time and money into it. So yeah, for some examples, let's just think about Amazon and just try to imagine it like how the website is now. And then ask yourself, you can type in the chat, what features do you think were in Amazon's MVP? So just ask yourself, like, what does today's Amazon look like in its simplest, most bare bones form? Like, what is it at its core? So yeah, I'll give it a couple minutes for the chat. Yeah, Nishan, that's probably what it was. But yeah, I think most of you guys are on the right track. It was not super complicated because Amazon at its core is a website where you can buy stuff. And that's basically what it was. And I don't recall the exact year in which it was created, but this is what, wait, yeah, this is what the first version of Amazon looked like. I believe it was like, I want to say late 80s, early 90s. I'm not sure on the exact year, but it's not super complicated. It's a website where people were able to sell books and buy books. And if you break down today's Amazon at its core, it's a website where you can buy things. So this kind of makes sense for an MVP in that you have the core of your product there. It's an online website where you can buy things, and it's not as complex. You don't have things like Amazon Prime and things like that. You're just selling books. So just logically, this kind of makes sense for what would go into an MVP if like Amazon were to be made today, for example. And yeah, I talked about most of this, but it's just a website where you can buy books, and it's not complicated, it's not fancy, it's just a really simple and bare bones website that contains the essence of what's in Amazon. So another example, let's think about today's version of Instagram, and basically the same question. What do you think would be in the MVP of Instagram? What is Instagram at its core? All right, saying comments, photos, photo display, likes. All right, yeah, most of that is on the right track. I'm not sure if they had bots that early, but yeah, this is essentially what Instagram was in its simplest form. And the people who made it, Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger, they didn't follow the MVP model too strictly. They made something kind of complex at first, but they eventually did cut it down and make this MVP called Bourbon. It wasn't even called Instagram. And yeah, it's pretty much core features where you can post photos, you can comment, and you can like. And if you even break down today's Instagram, those are the most bare bones and basic features. That's what would go into an MVP. Stuff like stories or like public and private profiles, just kind of additional features like that. You wouldn't really see those in an MVP. That's just kind of things you add later on. So they did have plenty of user testing. They had 25K users on the first launch day. And yeah, ultimately nowadays, today's Instagram, like I said, you have like features like filters and stories and things like that. But just logically thinking about it, this kind of makes sense for what would go into the MVP of Instagram. It's not meant to be super complicated or fancy. It's just a really bare bones version of kind of an app where you can post photos, you can like, and you can comment on others. So that's a few kind of technical examples of what goes into an MVP. So some tools to do so. These low-code websites are super great. Some examples of these are Glide, Bubble, and Webflow. And what these are is they do come with a lot of like pre-built templates for how to make certain websites, but it's just a way to like visualize your website as soon as possible and just get something out there so that like I said, you can obtain feedback as soon as possible because you have some degree of an MVP. So I do want to show you guys an example of a Glide app because I think if you're on Innovate projects or any kind of a projects team, this is super useful if you want to visualize like a potential final product before you actually code it, because there's not a ton of coding, as the name suggests, in a low code website. It's more of a place where you can drag and drop different things, just kind of visualize it. So just an example of a Glide app that I made. Let's just say a problem hypothetically is people have trouble with ensuring mindful eating habits and maintaining like their own healthy diet. And their solution is they create like a meal planner app, for example, and they have options to like add stats and info for each meal. And this probably already exists. It's just an example I made for the sake of this. So kind of having that example or that idea in mind for the example, I broke it down into thinking, what's an absolutely essential feature that I have to have that has to go into my MVP? And then everything else is like, what's just kind of nice to have, what's kind of additional. So I kind of broke it down this way where if it's a meal planner, you want to be able to like track meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, have information about like the nutrients in each meal to like track what you're eating. And then additional features, stuff that's like nice to have, maybe like graphs of over time what you're eating, and maybe suggestions for like what's nearby. So kind of once you prototype, once you obtain feedback, this is stuff that maybe you could add later on. But this really isn't the core of the meal planner app. This is stuff that like you can add if you kind of want to. So now I'll show you guys what I made. One second. All All right, hopefully this is still sharing. So it's not super fancy. To be honest, they kind of had this pre-built template for how to do it. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If I click on each, you can kind of see like the meals you had. You have the option to add one. You can even make notes. You can add a date. Let's just say 23rd. And then you can add in like a name and some details. And then if you go back, you can view all the meals that you had. So it's not fancy, it's not anything extravagant, but it contains the core of what would go into an MVP because it just has those basic features. So Glide is a super useful tool. I know Webflow and Bubble were a few others I mentioned, but I think Glide is super nice just to get something out there as soon as possible so you can obtain feedback and then just work on it from there, I guess. So yeah, aside from that, just some more resources for how to MVP and kind of what goes into it are here. These slides, I believe, were sent out in the announcement. So yeah, you guys can freely access these. And that actually went a lot quicker than I expected. So we'll practice a little bit here. So if you guys aren't in the ACM Innovate Discord, that's where we'll do this. So the link is right here if you guys want to type that in. And Ronan, can you send this in the chat if possible? Because I'm sharing screen. I don't think I can exit out right now. But yeah, essentially what you guys are going to do is split off into the voice channels. And you just want to think of a product idea, something that it already exists. Maybe it doesn't exist. It doesn't really matter. Just think of some product. And you kind of want to plan out what would go into an MVP of the product and kind of what features it would have. So the real focus here is like, you kind of want to break it down into what's an essential feature, what's more of an additional feature, and kind of like what tool would I use to make it. Maybe it's like a low-code app or something along those lines. That's just kind of what you want to practice. So I'll give you guys like 5 to 10-ish minutes. So you guys can just join the voice channels on the Innovate Discord and split yourselves up. And yeah, aside from that, that's it for the MVP portion. Ronak will be taking over for the Figma part of it. But yeah, just join the Innovate Discord's voice channels. And then, yeah, actually, Ronak, can you pause recording?
Actually, yeah, I would say also, okay, so we are now back from the breakout rooms. And right now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Figma a little bit. So Anish gave a really good explanation of kind of how to think about MVPs. But one of the things that we like to think about with MVPs is how do we kind of draw them out? So there's a lot of good ideas with low code stuff. Another really good thing to think about is kind of how do I mock that experience with design, right? And another big important use of what we'll talk about with Figma is kind of getting a visual representation of what you're going to build and what your brand is. So let's go and get into that presentation. Hopefully, I'll can see my screen. The effective idea of Figma, in my opinion, is to express your ideas quickly. And this is kind of meant to be a complement to MVPs. So quickly, for those of you who don't know, what exactly is Figma? You hear people say Figma all the time. Designers swear by it. Engineers occasionally use it. So what exactly is Figma? So Figma is really a vector graphics editing tool with prototyping tools built in. Vector graphics is basically, if you've ever heard of SVG, or basically any kind of graphic that you can zoom in a lot, like infinitely, like basically the idea is like there's a bunch of math behind the image instead of like binary, to get technical. But really what Figma is used for is commonly used to design what are called wireframes and user flows. And it's also a very handy way to create design assets and kind of determine the branding of what you're going to build. And so if you use other things, you might be like, why don't we use Photoshop? Why don't we use Sketch? Why don't we use something else? The biggest reason I think for Figma is it allows you to collaborate in real time. So as you'll see, you can have multiple mouses, multiple cursors in one dock. You can kind of collaborate and develop something in real time. You can do comments, and it's really cool. Additionally, you can make interactive prototypes in Figma that you can actually send. So for those of you in Innovate projects, we'll be doing a lot of user research. If you don't already have a fully built out app and you want to start sharing like prototypes of your project to other people, Figma is incredibly valuable because it'll let you kind of do that. And ultimately, Figma is a really good jumping off point to code, as you'll see shortly. And lastly, the biggest thing for me is Figma lets you understand user flows really quickly. So what Anish showed you earlier with the glide is really good and really cool. But one thing that you might also find is when you go to kind of create the glide is you might be kind of frozen, like how exactly do I build out this flow? And Figma kind of really helps you break down your app, your project, whatever it is, into the flow. So quick disclaimer, I know a lot of people kind of stay away from Figma because they're not a designer. I really want to stress this, that Figma is for everyone, and ultimately it's a tool to design user flows. So I'm going to say, I say user flow a lot. When I say user flow, I just kind of mean like, if I go to Facebook to like message my friend, my flow is logging onto Facebook. So typing in facebook.com, selecting my friend from the sidebar, typing in say Shravan and typing a message. That's a user flow. And the ultimate, the idea with Figma is to kind of get back to this MVP idea of using Figma to create a low fidelity prototype and doing a bunch of user testing back and forth, going back to low fidelity, going back and forth with user testing until eventually you can get to a high fidelity prototype and start doing some actual engineering. So without further ado, let's kind of talk about what wireframing is. So wireframing is basically the idea is that you would have a frame, so that's what these phones are, and there are wires connecting them. And essentially the idea is to plan out the flow of your app and not worry about the aesthetics. This is a terrible picture, actually, I'm looking at it, because this person has way too straight lines. Like nobody actually has. We're gonna show my examples of wireframing later. No one draws this nicely. I mean, if you can, that's great. I'm just not able to do that. And so this is out of order. Oops, that's my bad. So one of the number one tips that we're gonna have with Figma is you want to hand draw first, unless you're like a Figma natural. It's my opinion, you should always kind of hand draw what you're gonna do before you do it, and really want to focus on the flow of your app before the UI. In other words, think UX first, UI second. UX is user experience, UI is user interface. And really like think about what is the problem you want to solve. This is kind of going back to the MVP workshop, but you want to draw out the problem flow first and then break into kind of what UI tools will I use to get you there. The ultimate, like, well, if there's one takeaway I can have you all take from this is that ultimately you should be thinking about user interface and engineering and coding and apps and all that as just a tool to help a user solve a problem. So focus on the problem, focus on the user experience first. So let's kind of think about the app. So this is kind of loosely based off Anisha's idea earlier of the food tracker thing. So the first thing you want to do is kind of determine the flows and user paths. So you can see here my terrible handwriting of me kind of taking down the ideas from the MVP and kind of determining flows and user paths. So you see, I have my daily tracker and my flow is, the user will choose their meal, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. They'll add items and then they'll show the food log. And then after they add items, they'll probably like search for an item and add a quantity. I'm not really sure how that will work. For food log, I have something similar. You choose like a date, meal, you can see what they've eaten, tap through and see nutrients and calories. And you can kind of see I've done like a very high level breaking down of just what are some potential user flows. This is not meant to be entirely comprehensive, but it is meant to kind of help you steer yourself onto the path of understanding what your users will be using your app for. I highly suggest actually coming back to the user flows that you define initially after we go through this process, because as you'll see when we go with this demo, you're gonna come up with new ideas. After you come up with the user flows, let's kind of focus on one flow and let's draw screens for it. So you can see this is my handwriting. I chose the daily tracking flow. And so you can see I did a low fidelity mockup of the kind of what the flow will look like. So we choose a meal type, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I did not have enough space to fill out those words. You can kind of see a little flow where you can choose what did you eat. You can see they've already added pizza. There's a plus button to add more. And then you can see the food log of what happens. So easy enough. Don't overthink it. You just want to kind of break it down. Now we're going to kind of get into using Figma. So I'll have a link to the Figma I'm using for this after, but let's just kind of get into it right now. So this is the Innovate Figma Workshop kind of thing. And so before we kind of get into actually using Figma, I'm going to take a quick detour into quickly teaching you some of the shortcuts. So one thing is I'm using a Mac with a trackpad moving around. If you don't have a Mac, it's totally fine. I highly suggest kind of using Command and scroll on your mouse, or if you have something else like Command++. Basically, you want to be able to zoom in and out. You'll see it's very useful to be able to zoom in and out and scroll around. So the first thing is artboards. So in Figma, everything lives inside an artboard. You can kind of have stuff outside as well, but the general idea of Figma is that you will press A, and you can see that we already have a bunch of different artboards. So I can just kind of drag and create an artboard like this, and you can export a Figma artboard. But we can also kind of create predefined tablets. So you can grab things from the community, you can get paper. So I actually made my resume on Figma. You can build out iPhone apps, tablets, whatever. You can basically just click that, and then boom, I have like the exactly proportionate size screen. Next thing about Figma is rectangles. So in my opinion, rectangles are the most useful tool in Figma, and you'll kind of see how overpowered they are. But basically, for now, all you need to know is press R, You can draw a rectangle. If you also press R and hold Shift, you get a square. A little exciting. So some cool Figma tricks right there. And then lastly, you press T, you can create text. Wow, it's text. And you can see if you select it, you can actually change the font, do a bunch of other stuff. So let me just like this. And one really quick thing that you'll notice immediately is that the text isn't really centered in the middle of this. If you are trying to middle line things, oh wait, I just realized there's chat. Everyone's chatting. Oh, okay, never mind. Cool, it's all good. If you are trying to middle line things, there's this little button here. Click this one to kind of align it in the middle of the box. I have the tip over here. It's really annoying, but basically it'll push your text one way or another. Yeah. And then as you kind of get into bigger Figma projects, you'll kind of realize that grouping is really, really useful. So Command G is for group selection and Command Shift G is for undoing the group selection. So if I kind of draw this, I can select both and do Command G. Now it's one thing. Or I can do Command Shift G, and now they're separate things. I'm going really fast, so please do stop me. Yeah. And then lastly, Option Drag or Alt Drag if you're on Windows is to duplicate things. And this is super useful, as you'll see, is because what I do is I try to get one thing that looks good and just kind of go from there. Okay, so that's a bunch of talking. I'll refer back to these tools a lot. I just want to get these out of the way so you can kind of see how I'm doing this. So I kind of have a quick demo of what I've done over here. And so this is actually what we have over here. So we started off with this. So let's actually see this. This is kind of low, but let's actually let's do this. Well, let me. Okay, so we have, oh yeah, one thing you can do is you can kind of just drag images in here all the time. I actually do this all the time whenever I'm trying to design something. I just kind of drag and drop other cool people's ideas and websites and then just copy them. So yeah, you can see we took the original idea here that we had here, and we just kind of drew artboards to kind of do each of these. So let's, for example, if I just wanted to do the food log, as you can see here, all I did is I first pressed A, selected a phone. So let's choose the iPhone 8. And then food log, we have some text. So T, food log. And then we have some other text down there. So let's go down here. And then you can see it's not aligning. So let's go press that one so we can go left. Wednesday, April 21st. Let's make it less bold. And then you can see here that lunch is a little bit fancy looking. I'm going to just kind of use a rectangle for this. And then we have another thing here for like the actual components. And then let's do this. Then I'm actually going to make sure these are staying inside here. That's how you kind of get them to look cool. And then now that we have one flow, we can just do this. One thing to note is how do I split the rectangle? So do you mean like, how did I do this?
No, I thought you used the first rectangle on like the page and just like split it into two.
Oh, which rectangle?
The iPhone 8 one, that the first rectangle, like right after Wednesday, April 21st.
Oh, this one. Oh, like you thought these were one rectangle?
Yeah.
Oh no, I did not. Yeah, no, I don't.
Oh, okay. Just
Probably.
copy them.
Yeah, I just got, so I go really quickly. Sorry. So yeah, what I did is I did the rectangle and then I held Option to create the next one.
Oh,
And one thing I did is I hold Shift when also holding Option, and you can see now it's kind of aligned. That's how you kind of get things to look nice, just by holding Shift. And you can see we have something like kind of cool. And wow, we made Windows. We did what Microsoft did in like 20 years and 30 seconds. Yeah. So now that we have kind of the initial flow, what we'll do is now we'll kind of add text. And this is just with the T tag. I forgot to delete my prototypes. But if we want to kind of go from this to this, what we can do is we can grab this one and let's just simply add the text. So this is, if any of this kind of seems basic, that's good. I mean, you're kind of getting into the Figma mindset. It's really just kind of putting text, breakfast. And then I kind of, for whatever reason, I just felt like using a lighter font. It doesn't, at this point, don't focus too much on aesthetics. It's more just what kind of feels right to you. And then over here, actually, what I do is because I like how this one looks, I'm going to group the whole thing, press Command G. and then boom, let's make 3 of them. One other thing we can do actually is if we want to get really edgy, we can kind of make these little circly. So if I want to make any rectangle a circle, I just select the rectangle. And then over here, you can see this other thing is here. This thing is called corner radius. If I just adjust the corner radius, so if I just make it like 100 or something, you can see it's rounded. And so we'll see later that you can make really, really nicely made things, but I'm just going to do this. You know, I'm not a designer. I just kind of like this idea of rounded rectangles. We'll kind of get into how to make things look good later. So boom, you know, I kind of went ahead and did that as well. But now that we've done this, what we want to kind of think about doing now is connecting it together. So in Figma, there's another tab here called prototype. And what we can do basically is we can click on any little rectangle and connect them. So I'm going to click on breakfast and just connect it over. Lunch, connect it over. Dinner, it's connected already. What did you eat? Next, we'll go here. Oh, so this is not actually like baited. Like I actually, when I was making this workshop, I completely forgot that there's a whole other flow we need to make. And one of the benefits of Figma is as you build things, you kind of realize, oh, we need to have a whole add item flow because I completely ignored that whole flow. So I went ahead and did this already, but you can see I kind of follow the same ideas as above, kind of skip some steps, but what I did is I built a little item details thing. So we have the item name, a little thing to choose an image, and like an amount, like slices. And then I went ahead to make this really prototypey. I kind of have this, it goes to this page, and then we don't need this. And what you'll see is what this lets us do is now we have this little play button here. So if I select this and hit the play button, we actually get a prototype. I can click through and like add something. One thing you'll note is that this is a horrible picture of pizza. That's because I intentionally chose a really bad picture of pizza. Oh, forgot to link add item. Whoops. But I kind of tend to choose less good pictures when I make a Figma, just because that's what the real user, or like a real user is not going to have the best pictures when they use this app. But yeah, I know I went really fast into the how to do prototypes. The quick way to do it is basically you just select the rectangle and then drag the rectangle arrow to another artboard. Prototype is basically about linking different artboards together. Cool. I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to just keep going. So we've built this kind of system, and what's actually really cool is with the share feature, since I click play, I can actually share this prototype with someone else. And so y'all can actually click through my really quickly made prototype. But this is really powerful because now when you do your user interviews, rather than saying, what would you tap? You can kind of literally give someone a clickable prototype really quickly. So now that we've built this and we've kind of gone a little bit further, we kind of want to make things look better. And so that's kind of where the next step comes from. So if we go back to the slides here, the slide that I put out of order, how do I get started? Let me put that over here. There's a ton of resources. So figma.com/community. This is one of my favorite places, but the other links are also incredible. But basically, there are a million different like resources on Figma that you can basically just steal other people's assets and then use them for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, that's one thing you immediately figure out after using this for 3 seconds. You want to go back. There's no back button, and you would totally need to go back. And I'd like to address that. So OC, original content. Original content is great, but one of the key things that we need to kind of think about, especially when building your own app, is to kind of innovate on someone else's idea. You know, what we're gonna do here is you'll see I'm gonna take other people's components and build on it to build what we have. Because right now, I'm not saying go find someone else's fitness tracker app and just like copy paste it. Like don't do that. But what you could totally do is kind of use a bunch of other people's fitness tracker things, go through their apps and understand, okay, at what point during this flow did it kind of not make sense? At what point did it work well? And use the good ideas. So let's kind of build off of this. And so I'm going to use a thing here in Figma that I've found ahead of time. It's basically called the MobileUIKit. I believe, is this one? Yeah, this is on Figma Explorer somewhere here. I think it was like one of the first ones. They might have reorganized it, but there's a million things here. I'll link to it in case. Oh, yeah, it's right here, MobileUIKit. You would click on it, and then usually what I find is easier to do is just to click duplicate, and then that will add it to your library. You can also theoretically click around. You can do this. Sometimes my computer doesn't perform, but you can see I just kind of like the vibe and the aesthetic of this. So I'm going to kind of take these components. And people publish these libraries for the express purpose of you using them. As you can see, they're designed as templates. And so what I like to do, as you'll see down here, is I've basically gone ahead and taken one of my original screens and then found a screen that looks similar to it or has components I like, and then built my own over it. So you can see for this screen, choose your meal type. I kind of like how this is like an initial sign up screen. So I took that idea and built choose meal type. This isn't that much better, but you can see this one, what did you eat? I kind of liked how this can kind of show an image and some other stuff. So now we have this. And then we have like the add new item field. We put the button up here because the one thing I noticed when I was using this is like when I clicked it, I would have to move my mouse down. I didn't like moving it down, and especially if you're on your phone. One thing you can do with Figma is you can actually deploy, you can actually send the prototypes on your phone. So you can actually test apps on your phone if you're building a mobile app, and you'll kind of notice, oh, I kind of want this button up here. And so what we'll actually do right now is we will do a live demo of this one. So we have this kind of badly built UI here for item details, and we'll do this live. So let's go here and let's just kind of look around. I actually have not done any prep for this. So we kind of want to have we basically we're looking for an interface that lets us kind of add images and kind of type in text. So I'm seeing this. This is like a pretty nice way to like add images. Maybe like a modal, like you would tap on something and this would pop up. So let's keep this in mind. And oh, okay, perfect. So actually the sign up field is perfectly because they already have a bunch of text fields. So let's copy both this one and this one. And now let's go to our Figma workshop, paste them over. And so these are the kind of things we're going to build off of. And then one thing I'm also going to do is I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of demystify how Figma components are built. So you might see something like this and you're like, how the heck did they build this really nice looking thing here? Everything in Figma is a rectangle. That's like the number one thing I want you to really stress. Every single thing you see in Figma is usually a rectangle. So this right here, basically all you would do is, let's make an artboard here. I'm just going to draw a square. If I click on fill, I can actually click on this and steal their colors. And click stroke. And we can click it again and choose their color. Now we have that. So we have a similar vibe here. They have some kind of a border radius. And so if you want to figure out how to get the border radius immediately, like figure out the best border radius, that's what makes it, I think, in my opinion, what separates really like the god tier designers and just the rest of us is that the god tier designers kind of know what color schemes to use ahead of time. They can kind of figure things out quickly. In my case, I'm just kind of pressing numbers until it works. And then they have text here. So I'm just going to press T, make a little text field, type in name, center it, left align it, and then let's just choose the color of, oops. Oh wait, you have to select the text. I'm going to choose the border radius color. It's a little bit too dark. Let's try to make it a little bit darker. And boom, we've built the exact same thing. Just select it together and make a group. Now we have the same component. I mean, not the same, but like that's kind of how these things are built. So let's kind of get into this. So item details, let's take this. So item details. Let's see, confirm. You kind of confirm the tab. So we have the item name that's already there. Let's make this amount. And then I like to actually keep the keyboard here because that kind of forces you to think about, oh yeah, there's going to be a keyboard when you build the app. Let's get rid of this one. Let's call this add item. We don't need this. As you can see, this is like me doing this really lazily, really quickly. When you do this for yourself, you can choose how much time you want to spend on it. But what's really nice is you can kind of use this as a way to really quickly design potential flows. And then I'm going to take the image from here, paste the image. And so initially there won't be an image to add. So let's actually remove the image and make it an empty fill. We'll make the stroke 10, no, 10, let's make it like 5. The outside, think there's a way to make it dashed. I'm not really sure how. Both of there's way. I'm not sure how to do it. We'll just ignore doing that for now. And then like in text, I can kind of go and add. Tap to add an image. Boom, boom, boom. Then 20, 30. And you can kind of see we've already kind of built out a nice little UI, just kind of clicking around and stuff like that. And then what we'll do is we'll build a second tab. And then how to add an image. Basically, one quick thing in Figma is every single rectangle or every single text, anything you see can have a fill. And if you select fill, you can see that you can kind of choose it to be anything. You can make it a gradient. You can make it something like this. I don't really know what this is, but I'm just going to choose an image. I don't have my pizza image here, actually. Let's just look up. Let's actually look up something else. Let's look up Coke. Not Coca-Cola. Yeah. This is a picture of Coke you might actually take, but this is still a really good picture. Save image as. And I can just literally drag the Coke. So they've added the image. This actually, and then we can kind of tap through the whole thing. So we can go to prototype. And so I'm skipping a lot of steps here, as you can see, but this is kind of like a way to kind of build out a flow. Yeah. I wish we were sponsored by Coke. That'd be great. But yeah, I mean, and that's kind of it for the workshop on like what is Figma. I'm going to quickly go back to the slides. I've linked to basically a ton of different resources. For those of you who are trying to build out a new project, whether it's for a hackathon or it's for ASM Innovate projects, one thing I'd recommend doing is first things first, kind of determine the flow, determine the different things that the actual uses of your app, kind of going back to MVPs, try to write down, okay, what are the different what are the problems that my app is trying to do, and what are the different user paths and flows that a user might take, and then try to draw some screens on your own. And when you get to this last part, the part that I think people tend to obsess over it, making things look nice, I highly recommend just kind of looking at Glide apps, looking at Figma Resources, and just kind of looking around here. So you can see Figma has a ton of different cool things here. For mobile design, for web design, you can kind of see the different templates they have here. Some of the other links I've sent here. Figma Resources is really incredible because there's like fully built out things here just for you to like look at. Facebook design is actually really crazily good. So if you ever need to like just get assets to like present things, Facebook design has a ton of great tools that I like to steal. So they have diverse device hands because Facebook wants to make themselves look good. But what I find more useful is devices. Oh yeah, Dibble is incredible. Yeah, okay. Let me link to Dibble. Dibble is where you can find the best designers. Oh, that's the tagline now. Nice. You can look at a lot of people's things on Dibble. One thing to make sure to always take into account, no matter where you are, make sure to look at the credit, see if they're allowing you to use their things with no credit or with credit. A lot of places, sometimes you might need to pay a little bit. But yeah, I think usually the resources on Figma community are free, if not, unless otherwise said. Link on slides, yes. I don't have a link to Dibble. Dibble spelled with 3 B's, I think. But everything else is, yeah, on the slides. Here, I'll just put Dibble here. I'll put this here. Yeah, that is the workshop. I hope you all enjoyed things. If you have any questions on like Figma components, if you find any cool Figma thing, I can kind of demystify kind of how to build it. For the rest of this workshop, I'm just going to show you how to do fun random things in Figma. So quickly, so if you ever want to make like a cool looking graphic or chart, you can actually use the circle tab to do a ton of crazy things. So I'm just going to show you how to do cool things with the circle. So if you draw any kind of component in Figma, you'll note that there are other things involved. You'll see that if I draw a rectangle, there are little circles inside. So if you drag the circles inside, that's how you can kind of adjust the corner radius. And that's kind of, it's kind of hard to go out. But this is how you can kind of adjust the corner radius of this. So you might be wondering, what is the corner radius feature of a circle? Well, there is a corner radius of a circle because the circle is perfect. But what you can do is you can actually click this to make arcs. So now we can kind of make our own Pac-Man. So that's what we'll do. We're going to make Pac-Man. So I can just, make the Pac-Man. And we can actually now move the Pac-Man around like this. And now if we want to, we can actually make the Pac-Man open up a little bit, or we can actually make it a slice of pie like this. So this is really useful because you can do a ton of cool things. You can actually also keep holding Shift and Option to do stuff like this. So if I copy paste, I can now, I can actually make multiple ones. And all I'm doing is I'm dragging it and copy pasting. So now we have a little, this is actually a logo of another company called Code Day, but you can do stuff like this. If you also click on this, we also have the Polygon and Star tools. So Star is just whatever, but you can kind of see we can make any kind of polygon. And now I have a circle again. We can change the number of gons. So with the polygon tool here in general, Star is just like a big polygon. We can literally increase the number of counts until we get to effectively 60, which is a circle. You can mess around, do crazy things like that. You can also change here to make the radius. So everything is a circle. I think pretty much every shape in Figma can become a circle at some point, which is kind of funny. But yeah. One last tool before I head out. If you click on this, we have the pen tool. So if you used Illustrator at all before, the pen tool is effectively the same thing. We can kind of do crazy looking drawings. I'm not an artist by any means. This is my attempt to make Pac-Man again. And then you can click on fill, and now we've got that. We can click on effects and get drop shadow, or we can do inner shadow. Let's do a drop shadow. You can rotate it around, and here's my Pac-Man. That's not yellow. I don't know actually what yellow is. I am partially colorblind, so I think this is yellow. So here we go. We built Pac-Man. Let's press E. Or, oh, it's O for circle. Whoops. So yeah, this is Workshop. You can kind of select both. And now here's the last bit of crazy Figma-ness. Up here are a bunch of other cool things. So this is component. I'll get into components later. Components are actually really useful. But in kind of a fun thing you can do, you can do union selection. So I kind of combine them together, or I can subtract the sum together. So now this is like hollowed out. Or I can exclude. So now I have the opposite. Or I can intersect, which is just a circle. So you can kind of mess around and do stuff like that. And now is the last thing I will get into is the component feature. So say you're building your company, you come up with your logo. So for example, I'm going to come up with a company called ACM. So I'm going to make the ACM logo right now. Let's make a giant diamond. Then I think it's like a little bit, it's got a little curve. So that's a little bit too much of a curve. So here's my ACM logo. Let's ACM. This is not the font of ACM, but this is the old font of ACM. So we're going to go with Nita. I think it's DM Sans. Is it DM Sans? I don't know if that's the right font, but we're going to make the ACM logo anyways.
Yeah, you got the right font.
Okay, cool. Good to know. I should know. BCM? Okay, let's do BCM. I like that. BCM. I don't know. What does it stand for? We'll call it, actually, let's call it A plus CM, because I don't want to, we're the better ACM. That's what we're making right now. So we've made A plus CM. We're going to center it in the middle, and now select it, union it. So now we have this. So let's need a little bit more effort here. Oh, what's that? You want to get the color of the actual ACM logo? That's what we'll do right now. We'll steal ACM's actual color now. Oh wait, this is nice of a logo. Okay. So, oh wait, because this is a really quick thing. If you're on an Apple computer, you can do this. I don't have this in Windows. You can open up AppleScript and type in choose color, and now you get a little bit of a color picker. And now I can actually steal the color. That's a whole other tip, but you can save this as an application and call it color. But that's a whole other thing. But now I have the color, right? The app that they have on Apple doesn't work in my opinion, but it's overkill. It's like digital color meter or something. I don't like this. I don't like either of these. I don't like this. It doesn't let me copy paste. I have to like, I don't know. Anyways, so we have our app, we have our ACM logo, but I want to use it everywhere. So what we can do, oh, actually this, that's 25 is better, is we can click on it and we can click component. And now we have the ACM logo component. So A plus CM logo. And now if I make a bajillion of them, I can kind of take these, resize them, use them in other places. There's a problem with text, by the way, but we can make a bunch of them. And now if I just change one thing, we can change them all in one spot. No, I like my color dropper. But yeah, this is the really useful power of components. We can basically we can literally design once and then use it everywhere. Let's make it BCM. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There's a bunch of other things to do in Figma. You can do frames, slices. If you select any of these, actually, you can click the inspect tab and get the exact CSS, iOS, CSS, Swift, or Android properties to build that exact component. This isn't as accurate in my opinion. Like this, you'll see with CSS, most of the time they do position absolute, or they just kind of meme their way with the CSS, but you can totally use this as like at least a way to kind of think about doing it. I skipped over a bunch of other things you can do with Figma. So you can actually do this thing called overflow behavior. And so over here, I kind of hinted at it. You can actually make this whole thing overflow. So if I select both of these, I hit the group, I can actually, I don't actually know exactly, I don't remember how to do it, but you can basically make these scrollable, which is a little bit trickier. Say horizontal, I think. Let me try this. No, that's not it. But you can, there is a way to basically make things scroll through. You can like actually have fully scrollable things. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the workshop. I will have a link to this whole thing here. That's, I believe, the Figma demo. You can click on that and you'll see this beautiful little Figma thing I've made. And there's two of me. Yeah, that concludes the workshop on Figma. Hope this was helpful. If you have any questions about Figma, please let me know. But yeah, don't forget about the core idea of this is just to kind of think about the problem you're trying to solve and then work about potential solutions, kind of work towards building out potential user flows. And then from user flows, you'll kind of get a Figma, you'll get a design. All right, thank you. Yes, I am the BCM president. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to stop recording now. If you have any questions,